Right. If you are watching on YouTube, we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Some one or two technical issues this morning.
Hello.
Okay, let's have a look. Oh, yes, there we go. Obviously, rebooting did the job.
Yeah, I'm just going to get all the browsers set up now. Game's quite straightforward anyway.
Okay, well, that's good. I've got the live stream is now on, so
I've got all the audios from Pi. They're quite detailed and nice, which is good. One for the game, 2 Padlets, gallery challenge, blog post challenge.
Okay. You wanted to, there were a couple of cards in the gallery.
Yeah, I've seen you one sent through. I've just sent a few more over to him. um, Two audios, one from Bolton Parish. The other one from Lydia doesn't load properly. It doesn't for me.
Okay, let me have a quick look at that. I haven't got time. I'll try it in the session, see if we. The Bolton Parish one, all right?
Yeah.
Not had one from them this term, have we?
Yeah, I think we have one. I think Bilal,
Uh,
possibly.
I don't recall it this term. Okay, right, it's past. We all ready to rock?
I think so.
Right, let's get everybody in. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Teaching Live. It's week 8, and we are rounding up our 4 weeks of story writing today with the last chapter of our Skyfall story. Now, first things first, Mr. Corbett is still not able to join us. He's still in full recovery mode and quite a lot of discomfort from his hip replacement. So we noticed, and thank you very much for those people that posted a get well soon card in the gallery. We've passed those on to Pi, so we'll if he responds, we'll let you know what he says. So, how are you this morning, David? And can you give us a Pi update?
Well, I'm very well, thank you. This morning, John. There's a strange orange ball in the sky. I don't know what is going on, but it's warming up a little bit after a cold night. But it's very nice weather here in Chorley this morning. Pi is doing well, recovering well. They got him out of hospital within a matter of days. It's amazing what they do and how quickly they move patients after procedures like that. So he's back at home. As you say, it's a case of managing the pain and starting to try and move around. I know that's one thing he's doing. He's had one hip done before, so he knows what he's doing. And I'm sure he'll be along in the next week or two to give us an update himself. But I do have audios from him this morning, so when we're introducing each part, we will be hearing from him. And these were done this last week, so he's getting well enough to, get involved in what we're doing, which is great news.
Okay, so we'll start off this morning with, as usual, with a game. So let's just pull up the Teaching Live website. If I get into the right spot, here we go. And on to today's session, we'll look at the teacher notes because it's got the game on it. So I think it's quite straightforward, this one. David, have you got Pi's explainer for it?
I do.
Well, let's listen to, I think I understand it quite easily. So let's listen to Pi's explainer.
Hi there, and welcome to the fourth chapter of our long story. And we're going to warm up today with a 5-sentence story. And you bounce it backwards and forwards. John and David will play the game to show you. But the first sentence starts with happily, when you have something, a character doing something in a happy fashion. Then suddenly introduce some sort of dilemma or problem, and disastrously, get us on the edge of our seat, miraculously is going to be saving the situation, and eventually you can round your little story off. So the example I've given is happily, I went into town shopping. Suddenly, an escaped tiger appeared in the shopping aisle. Disastrously, it leapt towards me. Miraculously, Batman appeared as if from nowhere. Eventually, the tiger was returned to the zoo. And after 2 minutes, swap over. So you both get a chance at using different adverbial openers. How many little stories can you create?
Well, I think that's fairly straightforward, David, don't you?
Yes, I think we can handle this one, John.
So do you want to start off or do you want to go second?
You can start, John, if you want.
Okay, I'll start off with happily I pedaled off into the countryside.
Suddenly, the ground rumbled and an enormous eruption of Lancaster's volcano started.
Disastrously, the lava spread over the road, melting my tires.
Oh, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so a tireless bike, and John, miraculously, being the Iron Man that John is, he picked up his bike and ran quicker than ever.
And eventually, I reached home, sat down on the sofa, and breathed an enormous sigh of relief. Okay, do you want to start one off now?
Okay. Happily, Pi was reading a book recovering from his operation.
Suddenly, the door flew open, and there stood a policeman.
Disastrously, it looked like Pi. Oh dear, what criminal activity could Pi have been up to? I'm trying to think. Disastrously, it looked like Pi had been mistaken for a library robbery or robber, a library robber.
Miraculously, the phone rang, and it was the policeman's superintendent telling him the real victim had been arrested. The real, not victim, the real criminal had been arrested.
Eventually, a brand new box of books arrived from the library to say sorry.
Right, I'll start one off. Happily, I stirred the stew bubbling on the stove.
Oh, okay. So what could happen? Suddenly, something appeared in the stew, which John hadn't wasn't which was not part of the ingredients.
Disastrously, it appeared to be a piece of his bicycle.
Miraculously, John had been looking for that, cleaned it up, and put it back onto his bike where it belonged.
Eventually, John sat with his bowl of stew, happily munching on it until he bit on a spring.
Oh,
Right, I think we've got the idea there.
I think so.
Yeah, I think you could use a synonym for suddenly, or is it happily, lazily I walked down the road if you want to, but you've really got to be careful that you've still got the same 5 sentence progression. So it's a 5 sentence story we want. I'll leave those on you can either swap or you can keep doing it one as the first person and then swap after 2 minutes. I think it'd be better just to swap each time. What do you think, David?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So if you swap each time, so one of you starts it, then the next person starts it, then I won't interrupt you at all in the 4 minutes. So you got 4 minutes on 5 minute stories starting now. Right, that's your 4 minutes over. So I'll take us back to the TeachingLive website and we'll crack on with the Padlet activity. Now, I do like that 5-sentence game, David. It's quite a fun one, but there is always the danger that every story ends up with, and then we went home for tea, which as a teacher, I'm sure you've read quite a few stories in your time that finish that way.
Yes, and it's always a bit of a challenge to come up with something slightly different that keeps the reader on their toes and wants to come back for more.
Yeah,
That's always the challenge.
Yeah, that's why I did that one until he bit on a spring, because then you think, oh, I wonder what happens next. A visit to the dentist. So you can introduce a bit of jeopardy even to the end. And that's how authors and program makers, when they do TV programs, finish with an open ending. So you can always come back for another book or another episode. Right, let's get on to Padlet activity number 1. So here we go. And here we are. We're looking at the senses, looking, tasting, smelling, touching, listening. So have you got an introduction for us from Pi, David?
I have indeed. Yes, I shall play this right now, see what he says.
And we're now on to Padlet 1. We're going to practice writing about things that have happened in the past using the frame I remember. So each sentence starts with I remember, and obviously you're drawing on your memory, things that have happened to you. And you can remember looking at things, so pick up on little details from your past, tasting things, smelling things, touching things, and listening to things. So I'll read you the one that I did. Remember to pay attention, capital letter, full stop. Find little interesting details, not just I remember looking at the sea is boring. Bring it alive, name it, dress the picture up for the reader. I remember looking at the streetlights' broken reflection on rainy pavements in Hastings. I remember looking at the boarded up shop windows, the empty bus shelters and grey rain haunting the seafront. I remember looking at frost pots blossoming beneath apple trees. I remember looking at my budgie Charlie pecking seeds and chatting to his mirror. I remember tasting the salt of bacon curled crisp from the grill. I remember tasting the sudden tang of fizzy lemonade for the first surprising time. I remember tasting the thick, sweet crunch of sugar crusted on a lardy cake. I remember tasting the sand in the cheese sandwiches and the hot bite of tea on a cold seaside day. I remember smelling the soft mystery of my first ever peach. I remember smelling the petrol in a can hidden in the dark barn. I remember smelling the block drains, the dampness of earth and the hot stench of the goat's shed. I remember smelling bluebells and the slow silence of Tanner's wood. I remember touching the knotted fur on Allie, my dog. I remember touching the cold, bony hand of my Granny Poynton.
Okay.
No, I've still got it.
Pardon? I think
It just came off.
Yes, I think we get the idea.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple of things here, really. First of all, as much description as you can get in, and use some of the tactics that we employ all the time. So things like name it. So it's Ali, my dog, my grandma Poynton, or rainy pavement in Hastings. So name it is a really good one. Then we sentences of 3. See if we can spot. I think I spotted one when I read it before, where you've got lists. Well, there's a sentence of 2. I remember smelling bluebells and the slow silence of the tanner's wood. So there's a couple of things there.
The one above.
The one above. I remember smelling the block drains, the dampness of earth, and the hot stench of the goat shed. So sentences of 3 work really, really well. So that's the Padlet. All of your sentences begin with I remember, and then choose looking, tasting, smelling, touching, or listening? See what we come up with. I'll do one. I remember smelling the foul stench of rotting seaweed on Morecambe Beach. Because I've used... So I remember the taste of a sparkly lemonade on a sunny day on the beach. So which beach, Dylan? I remember the sweet taste of an ice cream sundae melting upon my tongue. I remember listening to the azure ocean waves, like that one, Matthew, crashing against the dampened sand while watching from the cobble wall above. Archie from Scotforth. I remember the countless bottles of warm milk I was smothered with as a baby. I like that one. Ellen from Dell. I remember smelling the cream on a hot chocolate. You've forgotten your full stop, Ellie, so go back and edit that one. But also, where did you have that hot chocolate? At the Shoreside Cafe or wherever, just try and paint a little bit more of a picture. I remember tasting the sweet smell of a Brazilian mango. Bilal from Bolton Parish. James from Scotforth. I remember tasting the wonderful Diet Coke for the first time in Hastings. It's a proper noun, James, so it needs a capital letter. I remember the first time I stepped foot on the beach in Benidorm. So how could you describe the feel of the sand on between your toes on a hot beach in Benidorm? Just think about that. See if you can put a bit more description on there. I remember seeing the big waves of the Pacific Ocean, the bad smell of the porridge that is rotten, and the sweet taste of Turkish ice cream. Now, I like that, Hamad. You've tried a really good sentence of 3 there. It will, Pacific Ocean is a proper noun, so it needs to be capitalized. And if your sentence of 3 can relate to each other, that can be even more powerful. So when you are writing about tasting things, I remember tasting the hot sizzling burger. So I always try and put it into a place. Where did that happen? I remember tasting the hot sizzling burger outside Wigan's football stadium when I went to a game there 7 years ago, because that popped up the other day, and I remember going to that game. I remember tasting creamy rhubarb and custard in a bowl. Where did that happen, Talia? I remember smelling the lovely French toast and the glossy croissants. Yeah, I like that description, Isla. But where? Where did it happen? It's a really good opportunity for name it. I like this one, Luca. I remember the taste of a blueberry slushy melting in my mouth, giving me brain freeze. Yeah, I like that one. I remember the curly fur of my old cat Harry as he lay on my lap. Yeah, I like that, Joseph. It's not just an old cat; it's the old cat Harry. I remember hearing the crunch of the autumn leaves in the 100-acre wood. Meta from Dell.
There's a good one here from Neve, Lancaster Road, John. I remember the smell of chlorine from the pool in Mallorca and waiting for my sun cream to blend in before I went into the pool.
Yeah, I like that. I remember the sweet, juicy taste of a raspberry on a summer's day. That's Drake and Petch from Long Parish. That's simple but effective. I like this one from Mason from Scotford. I remember hearing my mother complain at the manager in the corner house for the first time and the last. Obviously, didn't go back. Yeah, that's
Na-
quite.
Named it as well, the corner house,
Yeah.
which is nice.
Ben from Lancaster Road. I remember the bustle of Manchester Airport, a key commercial airport to the UK, now no more, turned into an RAF base for World War III. It's interesting. I'm intrigued by that story, Ben, if you get to write it. Oh, it's that one I was just I was trying to find. I was starting. Ben from Lancaster Road. I remember bustling Morecambe 75 years ago. I remember the Winter Gardens full of an audience coming to one of the poshest towns in Britain, at least at that time. Yes, it's true. And obviously you made that up, Ben, because you're not 75 years old. So that's absolutely fine because it's story writing. The Winter Gardens is a proper noun, so it needs to be capitalized, but well done. Like that one. Okay, we'll come out of the Padlet and we will go and have a look at this week's audio. So let's go back to the session page, go to the audio challenge, and we've got a couple. We have oh, well, I thought we had a couple this week, David.
Yes, let me just check. I don't know if yours is.
Let me just refresh my page. So you told me there was one from Bolton Parish. Where's that one?
Yeah, I'm just having a look. Yes, I've got it on there. Bilal from Bolton Parish.
Do you want to play it on yours? Because I can't see it on mine.
Oh, maybe I need to approve it first, John. What about that?
That would be a good one. Thank you,
So
Dave.
I can see it. No one else could.
Okay, so this is a Vocaroo one, so I'll make sure. Let's see what we got. So this was Bilal from Bolton Parish.
Billy's summer holidays were slow as a sloth. Nearly every day he went on an adventure to the Forest of Wonders and the shining turquoise lake. He would greet mermaids and feed the unicorns. After all this, he would walk down to the fire garden to meet Rave. On his way there, he was thinking about home. The city was crowded and there was no room anywhere. Malls were expensive and the food was as pale as the grey, gloomy clouds. But in the countryside, it was the complete opposite. Soon he arrived at the fire gardens. The sun had gone down and the moon was coming up. As he walked inside, he saw Rave flying as fast as thunder. Billy feeds him, then they go up in the sky to watch the countryside. The moon cast a shadow over the countryside. It was as big as Jupiter and as dark as a black hole. Ray flew back to Sarah to drop off Billy. After that, he would go off in the night sky and roar like a tiger. Billy knew that one day he would be discovered. He didn't want that because Ray would be killed, so most of the day they would keep him hidden in the fire gardens. She blended in there because mainly everything was trees with branches of fire. One dusk night, Billy heard a loud roar and immediately ran into the Forest of Wonders. There he saw Joseph standing there, still as a statue. Terrified, he clenched his teeth hard. Joseph called Billy. But Billy, shouted Joseph, who looked petrified. There he fainted and collapsed on the ground. Billy told Rave to quickly fly back. Then he dragged Joseph into their house and called Sarah. Sarah came down and gulped, asking what happened. Billy told her he saw Rave, then fainted with fear. Sarah and Billy talked all night. What should we do? Asked Billy. Sarah said, I don't like this idea, but maybe we should move him. But where? The city has already decided to open the fire gardens, Billy questioned. I've heard of this place far away. It's called the Fire Island. I think it'll be perfect because he's surrounded by fire and all the nutrition he needs, Sarah said. Billy said, fine, but this isn't how it was supposed to end.
So that's great stuff, Bilal. Really enjoyed that one. If I said have anything to say, slow that reading down a little bit because you got a little bit quick in one or two places, which made it hard to follow. But there was stacks of really, really good expression in your reading, and there was also some fantastic description in the writing. I loved the phrase, "The food was as pale as the grey, gloomy clouds." I thought that was excellent. Anything you picked up in that one, David?
That was really good. I quite like the ending because we know that obviously this is the ending of the story, but
Yes.
you know, when Billy said fine, but this isn't how it was supposed to end. It's just something there that's dangling about, oh, okay, there's going to be something else here. I want to tune in. I want to hear more, which is a really good way to end that chapter. Ready for the next one, John?
So that's Bilal's story, and he's posted the actual story beneath it, so you can go back and have a listen and read what he's written. It was, I did like the idea that the food was as pale as the grey, gloomy clouds, and in the countryside it was the complete opposite, which really shows the trying to contrast the sort of the greyness of the city with the color and the vibrancy of the countryside. So really,
it's one of the techniques Pi says, isn't it? The inside and the outside. It's a
Yeah.
similar thing, but just tweaking it a little bit, which
Yeah.
worked well.
really terrific story there, Bilal. Thank you for recording that. And we will get on to Padlet activity number 2.
Okay. Do you want Pi's audio?
Let's see how Pi's audio does. See if he gets cut off in his prime again.
He won't on this one. I've changed the settings.
As we've seen there, we can use a colon to introduce a list. We can use semicolons to split those clauses up so that we don't get muddled between the different ideas. And we're now going to look at the focus on using semicolons to show
that's
a close relation.
No, that's the wrong one, David.
Oh, yes, sorry. This is the correct one.
Okay, second Padlet, and we're going to be practicing some speech now. And of course, the first thing about speech is you've got to think, who is talking? How are they feeling? what's the sort of thing that they might say. And we're going to practice adding on an extra little bit of stage direction using either an ed, an ing verb, or an adverb, and just to build the picture for the reader. So my first example here is, don't you come in here dripping all over the clean floor, my clean floor, she snapped, comma, and then an ed verb, shocked at the thought of her kitchen floor being messed up. So I've added on that ed bit, the shocked bit, to show the reader, in this instance, what the speaker is thinking. Don't you come in here dripping all over my clean floor, she snapped, shocked at the thought of her kitchen floor being messed up. Now I'm going to do it with an ing verb. No, she curtly replied, closing the door sharply. So I've put she curtly replied. That means curtly means very brief, but also very sharp and rather snappy, comma. And as she said no, she closed the door sharply. Okay, I'm going to do one with just an adverb, and I can see I've missed a full stop off at the end of the sentence, which I know John will have noticed. Sorry, Mrs. Partager. Oh, say it again. Sorry, Mrs. Partager, but have you seen our Billy-go-lucky this morning? Said Joseph politely. So that adds on a bit of extra description about the speaker and how he's saying something using an adverb. And then I got another example with an ing verb. He's my friend now, stammered Billy, comma, grinning from ear to ear. Now, in order to do the task, I want you to try an ed one, an ing one, and an ly one. So that's 3 different ways of adding on extra information. So you're going to write down what the person says. Make sure you've got all the speech correctly punctuated. And then you're going to write he or she snapped or yelled or screamed or said, comma, and then you're going to add on the extra stage direction to reveal what's going on or what somebody's doing or how they're feeling as they're saying it. So over to you.
So this is quite tricky, I think, because you've got to pay attention to the punctuation, which Pi completely didn't do in the last one there, which we'll come to in a minute. So basically, your speech marks go around what's being said. I think we all know that. And at the end of the speech marks, at the end of the spoken words, you need a comma. However, you could, and in fact you should. So this one, sorry, Mrs. Partager, but have you seen our Billy-go-lucky this morning? That's a question. So it needs a question mark, Mr. Corbett. So that should be a question mark there. But even though a question mark is normally the end of a sentence, you still carry on using lowercase. So sorry, Mrs. Partager, but have you seen our Billy-go-lucky this morning? Question mark, speech marks, said Joseph politely, full stop. And this one is quite correct. He's my friend. So he's stammering. He's my friend now, stammered Billy, grinning from ear to ear. So get the bit in speech first, and then add the bit who's saying it. Don't just try and come up with an interesting verb rather than just said. And then add the bit on, either an ed word, shocked, verb, an ing verb, closing, shutting, slamming, or an ly adverb, grumpily, happily, lots of them. Can't think of any.
Gently.
Gently.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Right. Eddingly. Remember, Pi calls these Eddingleys for quick memory, doesn't he? So keep an eye on that. I think, John, as well, there's never been a more important time to use that grid that is on the Padlet to help you, I think.
Yes. So let's see how we get on. Let's pay real attention to the punctuation here, because it's tricky. Well, I've done an ing one there. What do you think you're doing? Which is a question, yelled Mr. Blenkinsop, dashing across the playground. Dashing with an H, dashing across the playground. So there's mine. Think I punctuated that one correctly, David?
Yep, absolutely perfect.
Yep, so I've used the question mark there because he's asked a question, but I've carried on with the lowercase.
And the question mark inside the speech.
Yes. So it's the same if you use the question mark. Not a question mark, an exclamation mark. Look out! Exclamation mark. Yelled Mr. Blenkinsop, dashing across the playground. Will be exactly the same. The exclamation mark goes within the speech marks, and you'd carry on in lowercase. Riley from Scotforth. Where am I? Asked Jeff. You've missed a comma out, Riley. Surprised at what he was seeing, and have you got the full stop? No, you missed a full stop as well. So you got your great, perfect punctuation around your speech marks, but then this is why it's tricky. What do you think you're doing? So that's a question, Darcy. So it needs a question mark, not an exclamation mark. Even though they might be shouting it, screamed Sarah whilst walking away. Got the comma and the full stop. Ben from Lancaster Road. Okay, you're going a bit off left field there, Ben. But you've so you've got a capital S for shouted. It doesn't need to be a capital S. It needs to be lowercase. And then you haven't continued. You've not added a comma and added an either an adverb, or you've not added an extra verb, addressing the House of Congress or something. Matthew from Fingen. Get away from that farm, shouted Mr. Victor towards the stranger who was approaching Maggie's secret home. Excellent, Matthew. Well done. Don't you dare come in here, shouted Mrs. White, breathing heavily. Well done, Thea. I did try to channel my best pie West Country accent there. Why did you follow me? Shouted Mrs. Fitzpatrick, running in the woods. So that's a question, Dylan. So it needs a question mark, not an exclamation mark. Isla from Dell. Don't touch him when he's cross. He'll set you on fire, exclaimed Mr. Brown, running as fast as lightning. Yep, great stuff. The only thing is, in your speech, you've got two sentences. Don't touch him when he's cross, full stop. He will set you on fire. So it's two sentences there, Isla. Gracie from Lancaster Road. Where are you going? Questioned the old lady. It's not safe to be out this late, she blurted. I love the use of the verb blurted, to blurt. That's a good one, Gracie. You've done it slightly differently by adding in an extra bit of speech rather than addingly, but it works very well. Excellent stuff. Where on earth do you think you are going, young man? Shouted Mum in a surprising and shocking way. That you've done it again, Adam from Bolton Parish. That's slightly different in the sense rather than using a comma, you've just added in a surprising and shocking way. Now, the only thing you've done here is you've got an exclamation mark and a question mark, which is fine in text speech, but it's not okay in formal writing. You can only choose one or the other. As it's a question, you need to choose a question mark. Where do you think you're going, young lady? Mrs. Mill confessed to Sophia. Yeah.
There's a good one here from Mason from Scotforth. Aye, just sit in that there corner, and if I hear one peep, I'll give you a clip round the ear, reprimanded Mr. Mulch, sighing.
Oh, that's terrific. I love that, Mason. You've really got into your character there. Yeah, yes, you can. That you imagine somebody with a northern accent saying that. If I have, if I ear one peep, it's ERE because it's here. Oh no, it's not. Duh. What am I talking about? Absolutely, you know. Ignore me, Mason. You're spot on. You're quite right, quite correct there.
It's a good one here from Zachary at Long Parish. Don't worry, everyone. I'll only be here for a month, blurted Liz Trust.
Yeah, very good, Zachary. Don't needs to have a capital D. And you've got your exclamation mark on the wrong side of your speech mark there. So it's don't with a capital D. Don't worry, everyone. Comma or or a semicolon. I will only be here for a month. Exclamation mark. Blurted Liz Truss.
Zachary, if you can go back and edit that one, that'll be great.
Go to bed now, shouted Mr. Hill while half laughing and half screaming. I like this one from Sarah from Fingen. Hello, Mrs. Thomas, muttered Emily, avoiding eye contact. How to show that you're guilty without saying that you're guilty. That's a really good bit of show, not tell, Sarah. I like that a lot. Go get some porridge, demanded Pye Corbett, shouting at David. Yes, indeed. And what do you think you're doing? Scolded Mr. Birch, running to the park. Yeah, excellent, Blair, from Fingen. I like the use of the word scolded. Right, okay, we'll come out of the Padlet. And we'll go and have a look at today's gallery.
I think I've got the right audio for this one, John.
Okay, so on the gallery, we've got this one, Isla. Get well soon. We know who she's talking about. Nice picture of pie there. And I like the fact that you've got the TeachingLive logo onto your picture. That's really good. Abigail has done a get well soon card, as has Jessica. Phoebe has as well, and from Abigail and Lydia's little sister. Now, I didn't know that Abigail and Lydia had a little sister. So there you go, Pi. Get well soon from Lydia, and Inaya from Bolton Parish has also done a get well soon card. So really, really nice of you to send those, and Pi will be delighted, I'm sure, to receive those. We've sent them on to him. Only one person has done, and that will be Hyder, has done his animal. It was a close-up of the animal's eye, wasn't it, we were looking at last week? So let's see how we get on with this week. That's a really great picture. Looks like a cheetah to me, that. You got the tail perfectly there. and the legs are really, really good. Everything's in the right proportion. That's not a bad drawing at all, Hyder. I wonder if you did you draw that freehand or did you trace it? It looks very, very well done to me. Watipa from that's terrific, isn't it, David? Look at that. Really great detail around the eyes there. A baby chimp. That's superb.
Great detail.
Yeah, really good. Careful drawing, the ears and everything. Super bit of drawing, and the eyes as well. Well done, Watipa. Right, we will go back to the session page and look at the teacher's notes for this week's gallery challenge. Did you say there's a bit of audio for this, David?
There is. If I press the right one, let's see.
Very brief gallery challenge. Draw the face of the narrator as an older person. Now I've put in an older person, face of an older person there. Obviously, lots and lots available on online. Very, very careful sketching there, very faint with pencil, just to get the shape, get the eyes in the right place, the nose down the middle there, the mouth. Very careful attempt, and do it faintly so you can always rub out if you go wrong. So it's rather like editing your picture, which is a bit like editing your writing. So improve it, make it as good as you can. So very careful little sketch there.
Okay, so drawing so in your story, at the end of the story, as you will see shortly, there is a time shift. So the story of the creature in the war happened a long time ago, and so the person telling the story is telling it as a much older person, remembering what happened. So the idea is here that you imagine, if it's you telling the story, imagine yourself as a much older person and draw a portrait. Good idea to find a good internet image of an old, a portrait of an old person, to get their character, try and get the character right. And if you look at Watipa's picture of a chimpanzee, with that level of detail, that's the kind of thing we're looking for, only obviously a person rather than an animal. So on to today's blog challenge. And it's the final chapter of When the Rain Falls, chapter 4. But obviously it's Pi's version of the story. And David, do we have Pi reading his story, or should I read it for?
We've got it here. Let's hear from Pi.
And now we're on to our final part of the story. The secret has been discovered, and we've got to get some sort of way of pulling things together and saving the situation. So my story, chapter 4, When the Rain Falls. The next day it rained. Rain poured from the sky. Rain pounded the fields. Rain filled the water butts and flooded the laggers, the pathways, and the roads through the village. The laggers is what we call the little alleyways. It was as if the sky had split apart and it would rain forever. Mrs. Hill stood at the kitchen window, shaking her head, tut-tutting and muttering something about the flood and how we'd all sinned and this was God's comeuppance. But Joseph could wait no longer, while Mrs. Hill muttered away. If he left it any more, they'd be singing hymns and praying. Already time was ticking by. He had to save Aphrodite, and that meant finding Billy-Go-Lucky. Outside, the rain soon soaked Joseph to the skin. It sneaked in every crevice, up sleeves, down his neck, and soon filled his boots. Desperately, he searched the village, stumbling across the fields, calling and calling, but only the wind and the rain answered back. He stopped at Mrs. Partridge's house and asked if she'd seen Billy. Mrs. Partridge knew everything that happened in the village. Mrs. Hill called her a rumour-monger, a scandal chatter, a tittle-tattler, but didn't have a time of day to spend with the likes of her. But Joseph was at the end of his tether. Sure enough, Mrs. Partridge was at her kitchen window watching. "Don't you come in here dripping all over my clean floor," she snapped, shocked at the thought of her kitchen floor being messed up. "Sorry, Mrs. Partridge, but have you seen our Billy-Go-Lucky this morning?" said Joseph politely. Mrs. Partridge sniffed distastefully and eyed the small boy. "Drowned rat, more like," she thought to herself. "No," she curtly replied, closing the door sharply. Joseph stood under the yew trees at the edge of the village yard. He could hear the water dripping and the wind made him shiver. It was there by the church that he got the idea. Like an answer to a prayer, it came to him. Maybe Billy had returned to find Aphrodite again. After all, he loved animals and always had a pet rabbit, a vole, or a pet mole tucked into his shirt. Maybe he'd found the courage to go back. It would be the sort of daft thing that Billy might do. But how would Aphrodite receive him? Now, all this happened almost 90 years ago. Billy had returned. Somehow he got over his fear and came back with a coney that he'd snared. I found him chatting with Aphrodite tucked into a bush. "He's my friend now," stammered Billy, grinning from ear to ear. They're all gone now. Billy was older than me and was sent to France, where he died in the rag ends of the war in 1945. He would never see his beloved village again or whisper his silly nonsense into Aphrodite's ear. Yet still I dream of her, the great black shadow slinking through the darkness, pacing the fields in my memory. She lived long after the war ended, long after I returned home. One day, several summers after the war had ended, Mrs. Hill wrote to me to tell me that she could no longer find Aphrodite. Our great cat had disappeared, with as little fuss as she had arrived. Sometimes I can still see her, a dark ghost now in the night of my life, the shining memory of a friendship born out of chaos.
Right. Wow. That's quite the ending of the story there. So, couple of things, couple of points about the language we've got in here. So we've got flooded the laggers. The laggers are alleyways in villages and towns. In the village I grew up in Northamptonshire, laggers were called jitties. What are they called around your way, David?
We're talking about like snickets.
Yes, snickets.
Yeah, well, that was for Yorkshire, so I don't know about Lancashire really, but Yorkshire was definitely snickets.
Yeah. Well, they were called jitties in Northamptonshire, or sometimes called jetties as well in other parts of the world. But there's lots of different names. So trying to get that kind of thing into your writing is really impactful. Later on, he talks about Billy-Go-Lucky having a coney. A coney is a country word for a rabbit. Coming back with a coney that he'd snared, trapped.
I didn't know that, John. I didn't know that was what it was. I was going to ask you.
Coney is a rabbit. Now then, the main point here is that there is a big time shift. So we've gone from the main character, Joseph, wondering how things are going to work out. And then we're shifting to 90 years later, where presumably Joseph is now a very old person remembering what had happened in the past and how it had all worked out. So we can see that he found Billy chatting with Aphrodite. So Billy had made friends with Aphrodite. And then he's reflecting on the past. Billy's all gone now. Billy's older. He died in the war, and obviously the great black cat died sometime after the war, but just disappeared. They don't know where he went or how she met her end. But that's the story. So look forward to seeing how you end your stories too. And we will be back next time for week 9 of Teaching Live. I think it's we're doing non-fiction, I think, next week, if I recall correctly. Could be wrong on that. I need to check the plan. But you teachers, you've got the weekly the termly overview that will tell you what we're doing next week. But do try and get we would love to play 1 or 2 of the final chapters next time on the audio as well. So look forward to see your drawings. Do send more cards to Pi as well if you'd like to do that. We'll pass them on, and we will hope to be back. We will be back. Hopefully Pi too. Maybe not. We'll see how he's getting on. Next time for week 9 of Teaching Live. See you next week. Bye from me.
And bye from me. Well done, everybody. Superb week this week. Look forward to hearing some of your audios. Well done, everyone.
Okay, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.